Well, it's pretty much ready, I have to say, Vuyo. As you can see, we are now broadcasting from here, and certainly this centre has been constructed for an enormous number of journalists to arrive to cover the G20 in the days ahead. Not, of course, just from South Africa, but from all over the world. There will be a wide array of media delegations following the various world leaders that will be present here. Of course, those world leaders will not include the man that I normally cover back in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump, nor even his Vice President, J.D. Vance, who, like the rest of us, discovered a few days ago when Donald Trump took to his social media feed that the United States government is having no representation or participation in this G20 summit. But nonetheless, the summit absolutely going ahead without him. And as you know, Nra is being readied for the arrival of all of those delegations, including heads of government and heads of state that will be joining President Ramaphosa at this all-important, and I think it's fair to say, historic G20 summit, the 26th Leaders Summit that the G20 has convened, the first ever, of course, to be held on African soil, with all sorts of issues on the agenda to discuss, symbolised, of course, by those three words that the South African government has been using to define its G20 presidency: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Everything that is going to be discussed here over the weekend and in the run-up to the arrival of those leaders to join President Ramaphosa at this summit, designed really to drill down on those three key pillars: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And we are already seeing some of the preparatory work, the conclusions of the preparatory work being published that really gives an indication of where President Ramaphosa is hoping to take this conversation in the days ahead.
Before you left Washington, Simon, what were the conversations like in the United States about this G20?
Well, I can actually tell you, for you, not only just what's going on in Washington, but what I was hearing yesterday on my plane, because I got into South Africa last night, travelling from Washington, D.C., and there were Americans on board my flight, many of them who work with non-governmental organisations in Washington, D.C., who were travelling here for the G20, and many of them absolutely mournful about the decision by President Trump, almost in a fit of pique, to decide that he wasn't even going to allow Vice President J.D. Vance to attend this summit. And remember that to some extent that decision arose out of an error that President Trump made in a speech that he was making in Miami several days ago, when he was supposed to say that all sorts of people from South America had travelled to South Africa seeking refuge from communism. But in fact, he said in error, South Africa. And then instead of sort of correcting the error, he went on this whole riff about how South Africa should not be hosting the G20. South Africa, he said, should be thrown out of all the Gs. And many media organizations and the general conversation at that business forum where he was speaking in Miami sort of picked up on the mistake that he had made. And the more I think that he read about people saying he'd made a mistake, the more he decided to double down on it. And that resulted in the social media posting on Friday night, where he suddenly said the United States government won't be sending anybody to this G20 summit. So on the plane yesterday, I was hearing lots of people saying how distressed they were for the State Department officials that had already been engaged to position all sorts of security equipment and all the other trappings that would go with the Vice President's trip to South Africa to attend the G20. And as far as we know, J.D. Vance learnt of the fact that he wouldn't be traveling to South Africa to attend this summit the way the rest of us did, by reading Donald Trump's social media feed. So it was a pretty extraordinary, very last-minute decision that pulled the United States government out of this summit. But nonetheless, there will be Americans here. They just won't be representing the Trump administration.
And I'm asking this with my tongue firmly in my cheek. Do you think Donald Trump cared about the mistake he made?
No, I mean only in the sense that he's not someone that is ever really prone to acknowledging an error on his part. So I think, you know, he made a mistake in the speech and he soldiered on. The result of it is that there will be no US government participation here. But I think more seriously, it actually creates issues about the tail end of this G20 summit, because, as you know, the United States will be hosting the G20 next year at President Trump's own golf club just outside Miami. In order for that to happen, there's supposed to be the handing over of a gavel, which, when Brazil was hosting the G20 last year, saw President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva hand the gavel of the G20 over to President Ramaphosa at the end of that leaders' summit, which was formally symbolizing that the G20 presidency was being passed to South Africa to begin its year in charge. Well, this time round, as we know, President Ramaphosa has said he intends to pass the gavel to an empty chair. Does Donald Trump care about that? No, not particularly. And I think also more importantly, that when you look at those three key words, solidarity, equality, and sustainability, those are dirty words today in Washington, D.C. from the perception of the Trump administration. They reek of what the Make America Great Again crowd would describe as wokery. And the Americans are already talking about turning the 2026 G20 summit into a back to basics summit, by which they mean rolling back on all of the emphasis that President Ramaphosa is placing on solidarity, equality, and sustainability, which means that there's an opportunity at this summit for the South African government and other governments that are embracing those concepts really to put a stake in the ground and send a message to President Trump and other governments around the world that hew to his ideological viewpoint, that there is a substantial portion of the world's governments representing a majority of the world's populations that actually do care about the issues that President Ramaphosa is planning to focus on during this summit.
So we're going to leave it for now. Simon Marks, live from Newzroom, where, of course, he will be joined as the week progresses by the rest of the team.